Limla, then Junior Counsel for the respondent, Ms. Dorothy Martin. My learned counsel has already addressed your lordships on Ms. Dorothy Martin's first round of appeal. I will now address your lordships on the second round of appeal. We'll be making 3 submissions in furtherance of this point of appeal, namely, the doctrine of legitimate expectation is rooted in the principle of legal certainty and good faith, a central element of European law. Second, that a decision to resile from legitimate expectation needs to be reached by the correct reasoning process. Thirdly, that once a legitimate expectation has arisen, departure from it is equitable to the private law principle of breach of contract and estoppel. Your lordships, might I proceed with my first submission?
Are you going to make any different points to what leading counsel said in respect of legitimacy expectation?
Yes,
since that was one of her 3 points.
To which one are you referring to?
Well, Ms. Manick referred to legitimate expectation as one of her 3 points. Are you going to say anything different on your legitimate expectation point?
I will not be negating any points that Ms. Matlick will be referred to with regards to legitimate expectation, but I will be adding on the principle of legal certainty and the certainty and good faith, in addition to how the reasoning process was
You're making an additional point. There's not.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. So please proceed.
Thank you. I'm obliged. Well, it is submitted that the doctrine of legitimate expectation is rooted in the principle of legal certainty and good faith, a central element of European law with regards to the fairness of a public body, as per R versus Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, ex parte Hamble Fisheries Limited, and Lübeck versus Hauptzollamt Frankfurt am Main Flughafen, which is reported in the European Court Reports in 1981, which is also supported by Article 3, Section 1 of Regulation of the European Economic Community. Would you like to be reminded? I will be referring to the case with quotations in various pages later on.
Is it in our bundle?
Not the complete case.
Any part?
Yes, it will be in pages 9 and 10. That will be the Lübeck versus Hauptzollamt Frankfurt am Main Flughafen case. And would you like to be reminded of the facts of the case?
What do you say about the weight that we should give to this case? I mean, is it binding on us? Is it persuasive? Is it an example of the application of principles?
It is an excellent example of the applications, as it refers to the...
Do we have to follow it, or can we disregard it if we want to?
You can disregard it if you would like to, because the fisheries case is also quite relevant as well.
Or would your point better be that it's persuasive?
It is persuasive.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, we are faced with situations in which a public body has made a lawful policy choice at one particular moment in time, and then seeks to change its mind and adopt a second policy choice. The respondent has relied on the earlier policy and seeks a substantive benefit that will be forthcoming if this still represented the public body's chosen policy option. A public body should not be able to fetter its discretion. If it does so, then it will be held to have acted beyond its powers. Thus, the principle that legal certainty outweighs that of legality should be applied, which related to the first submission that correct reasoning process must be fulfilled, and would therefore be seen as a breach of the doctrine of legitimate expectation, which holds that those who act in good faith and the basis of law as it is, or seems to be, should not be frustrated in their expectations. Principles of legal certainty and good faith, and it also being a central element of the general principle of legal certainty in European Union law, would not be considered as an act of good faith. This means that European Union institution, once it has induced a party to take a particular course of action, must not renege on its earlier position if doing so would cause that party to suffer loss. Legitimate expectation is seen reasonable in all circumstances, as succinctly summarized by Lord Sedley in R versus Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, ex parte Hamble Fisheries.
Just stopping you for a moment.
Yes, of course.
Picking up on my lady's point a moment ago about whether the conduct of the students should be in itself taken into account, i.e. then bullying the college into agreeing to their terms in order to go to the college. And you ask us to take into account good faith and what the college has done. What's the relevance, what weight should we attach to the arguable lack of good faith by the students in using the decision or otherwise to go to the college as a lever to extract a concession from the college. Isn't that bad faith?
Could your Lord please repeat the question
Yes.
in the last section?
You're relying on good faith, or lack of good faith by the college in the way that they conducted themselves after agreeing to the change of policy of these students. What about the bad faith by the students in the first place in bullying the college into doing what they wanted? Isn't that equally relevant?
It is a valid point, my lord, but I believe that the students were not bullying the school, enforcing them in applying their need to avoid getting bullied themselves. And I believe that it is more important that the students can feel that they are safe in an educational environment, and that the school had a responsibility to the students to make them feel safe within that environment. Does that address your question?
Thank you.
If I may continue. As per page 13 in your bundle in the fisheries case, it states that, first, that legitimate expectation is now in effect a term of art, reserved for expectations which are not only not reasonable, but which will be sustained by the court in the face of changes of policy. Secondly, that whether this point has been reached is determined by the court, whether on grounds of rationality or legality or fairness, of all of which the court, not the decision maker, is the arbiter. And, as per Lord Sturley J. in Hamble Fisheries, page 11 of your bundle, one can say that the effect of the new policy is to strike retrospectively at accrued interest of the applicant, offending against the principle of legal certainty which is closely bound up, at least in European law, with the doctrine of legitimate expectation. Law J's principle that the question is always whether the discipline and fairness imposed by the common law ought to prevent the public authority respondent from acting as it proposes is arguable. The proposition that neither precedent nor principle goes further than the enforcement of legitimate procedural expectations should therefore not be applicable, as stated by Taylor J. at page 12 of your bundle in the Hamble Fisheries Limited case, where he states, I conclude that the doctrine of legitimate expectation, in essence, imposes a duty to act fairly. If your lordships direct your attention to the words of Dubrick versus Hauptzollamt Frankfurt am Flughafen case at page 9 to 10 of your bundle, he states, assuming that the... Yes, yeah, of course.
I know we're lawyers, but my brain doesn't work very well, so...
I apologize.
We've got to try and note down what you're saying. So
of course, I apologize.
Let's take it
I will slow down. He states, assuming that the protective measure was lawful, the Commission was obliged, in view of its consistent conduct, to allow Durbeck a transitional period. Subsequently, the Commission did indeed grant 2 transitional periods, of which Durbeck could no longer take advantage, and thus basically admitted the principle of the protection of legitimate expectation in the particular case. I would like to refer to you to Article 3, Section 1 of the Regulation of the European Economic Community of the Union in page 13 of your bundle, where it states that the Union shall be served by a single institutional framework which shall ensure the consistency and the continuity of the activities carried out in order to attain its objectives, while respecting and building upon the acquis communautaire, which is the supporting of the principles of the European Union. Lastly, the principle of legality, as manifested in the ultra vires doctrine, that dictates that an applicant will fail to obtain substantive protection because discretion cannot be fettered, will not be applicable due to a stronger principle of legal certainty. And one must act in good faith and fairly listen to both sides, for that is the duty lying upon everyone who decides anything. Your Lordships, I now turn to consider in my second submission that the decision to resile from the respondent's legitimate expectation had not been reached by the correct reasoning process, and the requirement of transitional period was not met, as per Regina versus Northeast Devon Health Authority, ex parte colon, which is recorded in the Queen's Bench for 2001, and R versus Ministry of Agriculture Fisheries, the previous case I had mentioned. In accordance to the respondent, there has been no assurance of consultation. The paradigm case of procedural expectation, or any, I apologize, it is in page 15 of your bundle. Continues on the policy of substances expectation.
Which part of the report are you referring to?
Page 15. And it is...
Which section of page 15?
Is it not highlighted?
Paragraph.
Oh, I apologize. I will...
I'm glad it's not highlighted.
We'll
For time's sake, is it possible if I could read out my third submission as I
Well,
only
no,
have
you
one?
refer us to page 15. Where on page 15 do you want us to look at?
And also
if
the time is also up for them.
Okay. Go on. Fine. Thank you.
I apologize for not being able to finish the
Later.
submissions.
Show that line of submissions.
Thank you.
Should we look at the time?
We have the response from the...
I'm so sorry. Quite right.
My learned friends over here claim that it was unlawful, the decision of the head teacher was unlawful, but we have made it clear that it will be a breach of the Equality Act and therefore making it unlawful. Secondly, respondents claim rather extremely that mental and physical well-being of students would have been affected in the pink uniform. However, a uniform is a code. It is a representation of unity, representation to prevent social groups or gangs being formed within the school environment. The colour pink was the only issue as to why the 17 students did not wish to go to Bednesborough College. Mr. Jeffries, in the kindness of his heart, permitted the 17 students to be exempt from the normal uniform policy. However, mentioned by my junior counsel, noted that he realised an overreaching public interest of preventing disciplinary issues from discrimination. Thirdly, in regards to respondents' opinion on detrimental reliance, we do not suggest that there was a detrimental reliance. However, assuming that there was a detrimental reliance, my junior counsel in his submissions referring to the case of Nadarija demonstrated that it is harder to prove. With regards to the appellant's submission regarding legal certainty, if this is an argument your lordships are willing to accept, then with all due respect, my lord, we need to have the task of balancing what is more significant, keeping the law certain, or preventing a breach in law by departing from the promise made to Miss Martin. We suggest that the rule of law provides for public authorities to uphold their legal duty of not breaching the law.
Isn't the discrimination thing just a bit of a smokescreen for justifying your clients having second thoughts about what they conceded, and they're trying to justify that by rather unattractively relying on the discrimination points? Isn't it really just their second thoughts? And discrimination is nothing to do with it, is it?
In all fairness, my lord, it is a legal duty. Relying on the Equality Act, it is a statutory duty that the head teacher has to comply with. Does that answer your question, my lord?
Not really, no. I think I can appreciate you're trying to justify it as that now, but are you seriously suggesting that he sat down and thought, I'm going to have to change my decision because I might be in breach of discrimination law? Or was it because he thought, blimey, I made the wrong decision here, how can I justify going back on it? I'll try and rely on discrimination. Which came first?
In all respect, my lord, we can only assume of what he thought when he made the second decision, but we must state that the law being behind him, he knew that it would be against him if he continued with that promise. Unless I can give any further assistance, my lord, these are my reports.